Step into Mesolithic Britain, also known as the Middle Stone Age. 10,000 years ago, as glaciers retreated, forests spread across the land. Small bands of hunter-gatherers followed rivers and coasts, inventing new tools, fishing, and foraging in a transformed landscape. This was the dawn of a new way of life, flexible, mobile, and deeply connected to nature. We'll explore Britain's changing environment, microliths and fishing gear, survival strategies, and the rituals and art that reveal meaning in the Mesolithic world. These pioneers laid the foundations for the Neolithic revolution. If you enjoy this journey into deep prehistory, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow the link to my channel in the description below and tell me what chapter of human history you'd like to see next. In Middle Stone Age Britain, survival meant adapting to forests, rivers, and coasts. Families lived in small mobile groups, moving seasonally to follow resources. At Star Carr in North Yorkshire, archaeologists uncovered wooden platforms built over marshes, where people fished and gathered reeds for shelter. Hazelnuts were roasted in earth pits, while deer and wild boar were hunted with arrows tipped by microliths, tiny flint blades set into wooden shafts. These microliths were often combined into composite tools, making them versatile for cutting, scraping, and hunting. Fishing was central to life. Bone harpoons and antler points reveal how rivers and lakes provided rich food sources. Salmon filled the rivers in great numbers, while trout, perch, pike, and eel were caught with spears and traps. Along the coasts, people harvested bass, cod, and flounder, supplementing their diet with piles of shells from limpets, mussels, and periwinkles. These weren't just food remains, they built up into visible features in the landscape, showing repeated use of the same spots over generations. Dogs were part of this story too. Wolf-like in build, they were already domesticated and played a vital role in hunting, guarding camps, and companionship. At Star Carr, dog remains show careful treatment, while later burials, such as Grimes' graves around 4600 BCE, suggest they were valued beyond utility. Their keen senses made them allies in a world of predators and rival groups, and their presence hints at emotional bonds between people and animals. Further south, the Kennet Valley in Berkshire became a hub of repeated occupation. Excavations at Greenham Dairy Farm in 1963 and Faraday Road in 2014 revealed intact Mesolithic layers with flint microliths, hearths, and wild pig bones, evidence of seasonal hunting camps. Families returned year after year, leaving organized activity zones and symbolic deposits. These strategies created stability in a changing world, allowing communities, and their dogs, to thrive in Britain's new forests. Life in Middle Stone Age Britain wasn't just about finding food and staying alive. People were also looking for meaning in their world. We know this because of some amazing discoveries. At Star Carr in North Yorkshire, archaeologists found red deer skulls that had been shaped into headdresses. These were probably part of ceremonies or rituals, maybe even hunting traditions. They show how deeply connected people were to the animals and the land around them. Burials give us another glimpse into their beliefs. At Aveline's Hole in Somerset, dating back to around 8000 BCE, more than 20 individuals were buried together. Some were placed with beads and ochre, which suggests they thought carefully about death and community identity. In other places, animal bones were deliberately left in pits or hearths. That wasn't random waste. It looks like symbolic offerings, maybe tied to seasonal gatherings or feasts. Along the coasts, huge piles of shells were built up over time. On Oronsay in Scotland, these piles became landmarks, almost like monuments. They probably marked territory or acted as gathering spots. And then there's art. Mesolithic carvings and engravings show animals and abstract designs. They weren't just doodles, they were expressions of identity, memory, and spirituality. Some sites even suggest that certain dwellings doubled as ceremonial spaces, not just homes. Archaeologists have noticed that some structures were unusually large or placed in prominent positions, with evidence of repeated gatherings and deposits of objects that weren't everyday tools. These included antler frontlets, decorated beads made from shale or amber, and carefully placed animal skulls. In some cases, unusual flint pieces or deliberately broken tools were left behind, perhaps as offerings. These finds suggest that people gathered in these spaces not only to cook or sleep, but to share stories, perform rituals, and mark important seasonal changes. The hearths inside weren't just for warmth, they became the heart of ceremony, with fire symbolizing life, safety, and renewal. In this way, the line between home and sacred space blurred, weaving daily routines and spiritual practice tightly together. Put it all together, and you see that Mesolithic Britain was more than survival. It was a world of ritual acts, symbolic deposits, and spiritual connections, a culture that blended practicality with meaning and community with belief. Clothing in Middle Stone Age Britain was simple but practical, shaped by the resources people had around them. Animal hides from deer, boar, and aurochs were scraped clean with flint scrapers, softened, and stitched together using bone needles and sinew. These garments provided warmth and protection against Britain's damp climate. In colder months, furs were likely worn, while lighter skins or woven plant fibers may have been used in summer. Archaeological evidence from northern Europe shows that bark fibers and grasses could be twisted into cords, nets, or even rough cloth, so it's likely Mesolithic Britons experimented with similar techniques. Decoration mattered too. Finds from Star Carr include beads made from shale, amber, and animal teeth, showing that clothing wasn't only functional, but also symbolic. Some beads were carefully drilled, while others were polished smooth, suggesting time and care went into their creation. Drilling tiny holes with flint points or bone tools required patience, and polishing meant hours of rubbing against stone or sand. This kind of craftsmanship shows that ornaments weren't just quick decorations, they carried meaning. A tooth turned into a pendant, or a bead of amber worn around the neck could mark someone's role in the group, signal family ties, or even act as a charm in rituals. The effort invested in these small objects tells us that appearance mattered, and that clothing and personal decoration was part of how identity was expressed. These beads and pendants weren't only accessories, they were symbols of belonging, memory, and belief, woven into everyday life. Footwear was probably made from leather, much like examples found at Mesolithic sites in Scandinavia. To put them together, people would scrape and soften animal hides, then cut them into shape. A single piece of hide could be folded around the foot and stitched with sinew or plant fibers using bone needles. Simple holes along the edges let leather ties or cords pull the shoe tight, almost like laces. For extra warmth, moss or dry grasses might have been stuffed inside, working as insulation against Britain's damp ground. Fur cloaks and capes were practical too. Large animal hides could be scraped, softened, and then worn draped over the shoulders, fastened with simple leather straps. At night, the same cloak could be spread out as bedding, doubling up as a blanket. Some may even have been decorated with beads or stained with ochre, turning them into more than just survival gear. They became statements of identity and belonging. Even though the clothing itself rarely survives, the tools tell the story. Flint scrapers, bone needles, and awls show how hides were worked, while beads and pendants reveal the care put into decoration. Clothing wasn't just about staying warm or dry. It was a way to connect with community, show who you were, and tie everyday life to the natural world. Britain was a world of innovation. People didn't just survive with what they found. They shaped tools that transformed daily life. Flint was the most important raw material, and it was everywhere. Knapping flint into sharp edges produced blades, scrapers, and microliths. Tiny flint pieces that could be set into wooden shafts to make arrows, spears, or cutting tools. These microliths were razor-sharp and versatile, turning simple sticks into deadly hunting weapons. At sites like Star Carr in North Yorkshire, Archaeologists have even found animal bones with flint tips still lodged inside. Proof of just how effective these weapons were. The bow and arrow became central to hunting in Britain's New Forests. With microlith-tipped arrows, hunters could bring down deer, wild boar, and even birds. Bone and antler were also shaped into barbed points, harpoons, and fish hooks. These weren't crude improvisations. They were carefully carved, sometimes with tiny holes for attaching lines, allowing harpoons to detach and be reeled back in. Fishing wasn't just opportunistic. At sites like Star Carr, evidence of wooden platforms and woven hazel fences shows people built traps and weirs to catch eels and salmon in large numbers. Other tools reveal carpentry skills. The tranché adze, a flint blade designed to be resharpened, was used like an axe or chisel. It could shape wood for shelters, boats, or fishing gear. Picks and burins added to the toolkit, allowing people to dig, carve, and engrave. Scrapers were essential for working hides into clothing and bedding, while awls and needles made stitching possible. Together, these tools show a community deeply skilled in transforming raw materials into technology that supported survival and culture. What's striking is the adaptability. Tools were lightweight, portable, and often multi-purpose. A single microlith could be part of an arrow one day, then reset into a knife the next. This flexibility was key for mobile groups moving through forests, rivers, and coasts. Technology wasn't static. It was constantly reshaped to meet new challenges. In Mesolithic Britain, tools weren't just objects. They were extensions of human ingenuity, bridging the gap between nature and culture. Mesolithic Britain wasn't just about survival. It was also about meaning. People expressed themselves through art, ritual, and symbolism woven into daily life. At Star Carr, archaeologists uncovered decorated antler frontlets, red deer skulls carefully carved and shaped to be worn like headdresses. These weren't hunting gear, they were ceremonial objects, likely used in rituals that connected people to animals, spirits, and the wider natural world. Engraving was another form of expression. Flint and bone tools were sometimes etched with simple lines or geometric patterns. These marks may have been decorative, but they could also have carried symbolic meaning, perhaps recording events, marking ownership, or serving as talismans. Ochre, a natural red pigment, adds another layer to this story. Archaeologists working near Scarborough found a sharpened crayon-like piece of ochre and a striated pebble with grooves worn from scraping. These finds show that Mesolithic people deliberately ground and rubbed ochre to create powder or apply colour. It may have been used to decorate bodies, stain hides, or mark ritual objects. The vivid red hue carried symbolic weight, linking people to ideas of life, blood, and transformation. In this way, colour itself became part of Mesolithic identity and belief. Spiritual life was deeply tied to nature. Rituals often centred on animals, water, and the forest. Wearing antler headdresses may have been a way of becoming deer, stepping into the identity of powerful creatures during ceremonies. Lakes and wetlands were special places too, not just for resources, but for ritual gatherings. Deposits of tools and ornaments in watery contexts suggest offerings to the spirits of the land and water. Fire, light, and sound may also have played roles in these ceremonies, turning ordinary spaces into sacred ones. In Mesolithic Britain, art and belief weren't separate from daily life. They were embedded in carvings, pigments, rituals, and the very landscapes people inhabited. Survival and meaning went hand in hand, showing that even in the Stone Age, people sought to understand their world through creativity, ceremony, and connection to forces beyond themselves. In the Middle Stone Age, Britain was a landscape of forests, rivers, and wetlands, and people adapted their homes to fit this environment. Unlike the permanent villages of later farming societies, Middle Stone Age groups were mobile, moving seasonally to follow resources. Their shelters were lightweight, practical, and easy to build. At Star Carr, archaeologists uncovered evidence of round huts made from wooden posts, covered with reeds, bark, or animal hides. These structures were small, often just a few meters across, but they provided warmth and protection against the damp climate. The construction was clever. Posts were driven into the ground to form a circular frame, then covered with flexible branches and reeds. Animal hides could be stretched across the frame for insulation, while hearths inside provided heat and light. These huts weren't just makeshift shelters. They were carefully built spaces that could last for months, or even years if maintained. Excavations at Star Carr revealed post holes and preserved timbers, showing that Middle Stone Age builders understood how to anchor structures securely in wet ground. Settlements were often located near water. Lakes and rivers provided fish, waterfowl, and reeds for building, while forests nearby offered game and wood. Living close to wetlands also made travel easier, since dugout canoes could be used to move along rivers. These locations weren't chosen at random. They balanced practical needs with symbolic meaning, as water often played a role in ritual life. Because groups were mobile, settlements were small and flexible. A cluster of huts might house an extended family or a small band, with fires at the center for cooking and socializing. Tools, ornaments, and food remains found around these huts show that they were hubs of daily life, places where people worked hides, repaired weapons, and shared meals. In Middle Stone Age Britain, shelters weren't just roofs over heads. They were the heart of community, built to connect people to each other and to the landscape around them. By the end of the Middle Stone Age, Britain stood at a turning point. For generations, people had thrived as hunters and foragers, shaping flint into microliths, building huts near lakes, and weaving ritual into daily life. But around 4000 BCE, new practices began to arrive from continental Europe: farming, domesticated animals, and polished stone tools. This shift was gradual. Hunting and gathering continued, but farming slowly took root, reshaping landscapes and communities. Timber houses replaced lightweight huts, polished axes cleared forests, and grinding stones appeared alongside flint blades. Life became more settled, with larger groups tied to land rather than seasonal mobility. For Middle Stone Age communities, this was both an end and a beginning. Their traditions of toolmaking, ritual, and adaptability laid the foundation for the Neolithic world to come. The forests and rivers that had defined their lives gave way to fields and herds. A new rhythm that would transform Britain's prehistory. So that's Middle Stone Age Britain, a world of hunters, builders, and storytellers, living between forests and rivers, shaping tools, rituals, and communities that laid the groundwork for everything to come. Their lives remind us that even in the deep past, people weren't just surviving, they were creating meaning, identity, and connection. If you've enjoyed exploring this journey through the Middle Stone Age, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of Britain's prehistory.